Do I need the microphone?
No.
I don't need the microphone.
Chair.
Chair? So, tonight, we've been seeing an awful lot of really awesome performers. And guess what? Now you get to hear about gender and sexual diversity, because a night like this is demonstrating gender and sexual diversity at an amazing level. David asked me to chat with you about some of that, and maybe familiarize you with some terms and some things that people don't necessarily have a real good handle on sometimes, especially here in North Idaho, where we can be kind of conservative and live in our little boxes. So I want to talk to you about things like sex. Can we talk about sex? So when we talk about sex, we're talking about most people, male and female, right? That's what we understand is out there. We think in a binary. We think male or female. Those are your choices. There's nothing else. But there is something else, and it's called being intersex. Intersex people actually are born with some physiology that's a little ambiguous. They're not quite sure. The doctor slaps the baby on the bottom and says, I don't know, Mrs. Jones, we get to pick. Right? Right? So what happens is mom and dad and the doctor kind of go, flip a coin. What's it going to be? And that's the gender the child is assigned for the rest of their life. But it may not be the gender that that child actually feels inside. Sexual orientation. We're hearing a lot about that tonight. Sexual orientation includes things like being straight, heterosexual, or lesbian and gay, homosexual, right? A lot of people talking about that tonight. Bi and pansexual. I happen to identify as a bi or pansexual. And then there's people who are asexual. These are people who just are not feeling it. They got other things to do. And there's a lot of other choices out there. So don't imagine that sexual orientation means gay or lesbian and straight. There's other stuff. We live on a continuum, a spectrum. Gender identity. Have you heard this before? Gender identity is how a person feels inside, okay? When they look in their pants and they go, ooh, yeah, that wasn't what I was expecting. No, I don't know what's going on there, because honestly, I feel this other way. This is internal, and this is not something they have control over. You know, a lot of people will say, oh, get over it. Start behaving the way people expect you to do. You're just making trouble for yourself. The problem is, science is showing us now that actually people whose gender identity doesn't reflect what's going on in their pants actually have brain function that functions more like their identity than their physiology, okay? Gender expression. Oh God, another gender word. Well, this one starts with an E. External, okay? This is external. Gender identity is internal. Gender expression is external. So, when you see that person that you know was born and called a boy, and now they're wearing skirts and high heels, that's a girl. That is somebody who's expressing their gender expression of feeling more female than male. Gender expression is showing degrees of femininity and masculinity, okay? Gender expression is about the clothing that you wear, and the way you wear your hair, and maybe the timbre of your voice, maybe your mannerisms. And the fact of the matter is, I would be willing to bet that in this world, in this audience, there are probably a lot of ladies that when they see a man in a kilt, they're like, hot, right? Now this audience may be an exception, but put some pumps on that man in the skirt, and we got a whole new ballgame, right? Now, wait a minute, I'm confused. Thought it was a kilt. What you gonna do? So let's talk about those people who maybe express themselves a little differently than what you were expecting. The technical term, the umbrella term for those folks that fall outside gender role norms are transgender, transition, transgender. They're somewhere in between, and that makes up people who are transsexuals. These are people who may well be in actual transition from one gender role to another, from one physiology to another. Then we have cross-dressers. We're seeing a lot of those tonight. Some really hot cross-dressers. Huh? Now cross-dressing, that's a little different. These are people who don't live it. This is done for a specific period of time. And then we have genderqueer. You know, genderqueer folks, gender fluid, genderqueer, they flow with how they feel. They may be very masculine one day and very feminine the next day. And you just kind of have to roll with it because that's what they have to do. And then we have people who don't feel like they fall into either of those genders. And other people who feel like both. So you see, again, we're dealing with that spectrum, that continuum of humanity. We're not binary creatures. We're not, as much as some of us love Star Trek, we're not binars, okay? We are part of nature, and nature is a continuum, not an either-or situation. So let's talk about transsexuals. Transsexuals may alter their physiology. They don't have to. They can do anything they want to. Some transsexuals choose to take hormones and maybe do those hormones, if they happen to be born and assigned masculine, those hormones will give them some bosom and will curve them softer and will make them feel and look a little bit more like they identify inside. If they happen to have been assigned assigned female, and they take male hormones, guess what? Their voice deepens, and they get a little more angular, and they put on a little more upper muscle, right? So they're actually changing their physiology, and these changes are irreversible once they do them, okay? Other folks decide to go a little further and actually have surgery to physically alter their anatomy in order to make their physiology equal and synonymous with how they feel inside. And you know, don't you think that's kind of a logical thing to do? If you wake up every day feeling feminine and you're not, you probably want to change that. Okay, here's a word a lot of us have heard, especially those of us who are a little older. The word transvestite. It gets slung around in the media once in a while. And transvestite is kind of it's a word used for cross-dressers. It's kind of hurtful, and people who are cross-dressers really don't like it. So you might want to slash that out of your lexicon. Cross-dressers, again, do it occasionally. This is an expression of their gender, and it's not about their sexual orientation. I guarantee you, on this stage tonight, you're going to see straight people, you're going to see homosexual people, you're going to see bisexual people, you're going to see all kinds of people up here. You can't choose based on how they look who they love, okay? Now, there's some ugly truths. The fact is, transgender people experience violence at outrageous levels. They are discriminated against every single day by words, by actions, by our laws. The fact is, 41% of people who identify as transgender attempt suicide. They try to end their existence. That's compared to 2% of the general population. That is 39% more transgender people try to kill themselves because of the way we treat them than the rest of us. 29% of them are sexually assaulted. And this isn't by strangers, this is by their intimate partners. This happens in their homes from their loved ones. And 40% are assaulted by their family, especially young people who are just identifying, just coming out, just getting off to college and realizing, I've got a bigger world to live in than what I thought I was confined to, and I can really try. 40% are assaulted by family, often their parents. Words hurt people. They hurt. You heard a little bit about this tonight, but there are some words that you should never, ever, ever use when you are referring to someone who identifies as transgender. She-male. He, she, it. Would you want to be called it? Tranny? Tranny is a big no-no. I hear it an awful lot, and honestly, unless that person has told you they're okay with that word, you should never let it slip your mouth. Shim? This is how we express distaste. This is how we hurt people. Instead, if you care about that person, or you just want to treat them like a human being, what you should do is ask them if you don't know. Ask them what their preferred name is. Even if you know they were born Jim, ask them, you know, I think I heard that you were going by another name now. What is it? And then use it. Don't pretend that you don't know it or you don't approve, because you're hurting them. Pronouns. Pronouns are tough. They're really hard. But you know what? If you try and use the pronouns that they're comfortable with, you're going to make them feel respected and honored. So you ask them, what pronouns are you using? Because I'm really not sure, and I don't want to offend you. If you can't tell, use some guidelines. Try their appearance. Sometimes, if you know somebody is swaying back and forth between gender roles, gender identities, pay attention to how they look right now. Are they dressed more masculine? Then try the masculine pronouns. If they look more feminine, try the feminine pronouns. It's the right thing to do for them. Use their terms for themselves, okay? Hi. I'm Di. What's your name? Paper in the way, and not working yet. Pat. Hi, Pat. I'm Di. It's awfully nice to meet you. You look great in green, by the way. I really like it. So Pat, can I ask you, do you have certain pronouns that you prefer that I use? Because I want to be respectful. Neutral. I can do neutral. Very good. Awesome. Thank you. Everybody, this is my new friend Pat. Pat, this is everybody.
Hi.
Okay, so hopefully you understand that transgender people have feelings, and they get a lot of abuse. And if you're allies, and if you're friends, you're going to take that extra beat, that extra moment, and consider your words, right? Thank you, and I hope you learned something tonight.